I wanted to begin with a reading of Master, a poem of his, When I Am Only a Dream. I come to tell you all of him, and the way to encase him in your bosom, and of the discipline that brings his grace. Those of you who have asked me to guide you to my beloved's presence, I warn you through my silently talking mind, or speak to you through a gentle, significant glance, or whisper to you through my love, or loudly dissuade you when you stray away from him. But when I shall become only a memory, or a mental image, or a silently speaking voice, when no earthly call will ever reveal my whereabouts in unplumbed space, when no shallow entreaty or stern stentorian command will bring from me an answer, I will smile in your mind when you are right. And when you are wrong, I will weep through my eyes, dimly peering at you in the dark, and weep through your eyes, perchance. And I will whisper to you through your conscience, and I will reason with you through your reason, and I will love all through your love. When you are able no longer to talk with me, read my whispers from eternity. Eternally through it I will talk to you. Unknown I will walk by your side and guard you with invisible arms. And as soon as you know my beloved and hear his voice in silence, you will know me again, more tangibly than you knew me on this earth plane. And yet, when I am only a dream to you, I will come to remind you that you too are naught but a dream of my heavenly beloved. And when you know you are a dream, as I know now, we will be ever awake in him. It's very beautiful to have Master's words, the expression of his love and friendship for us, his interest in us. There was a letter, a Touch of Light letter that Nayaswami Devi wrote some time ago called Unrequited Love, and it raised this subject that sometimes we can feel as disciples, that we are giving love, but we're not sure if we're receiving love from Master. For one thing, we don't see him, and we didn't get to even meet him in the body in this lifetime. And yet, his love is always there, his interest is always there, his friendship is much more with us than even we can offer to him. Master even addressed that. He said, you say that you talk to God, but he doesn't answer, but that's not true. And so he said, and so in the same way, we have to feel that we must know, and many times we have proof and proof and proof again that Master is listening and that Master is helping us. For one thing, we have our spiritual family, that he has brought us all together. Another gift is this path. Where would we be without this path? I know Master said to Swamiji, if you hadn't come, or if you hadn't followed this path, or if you had left, you would have been no good. Which was just to say, he said you would have earned money, but what's that? And so, not that he would have been some super villain, but his life wouldn't have amounted to anything, and Swamiji would be the first to agree. He even begins his, you could say it's his autobiography, although as he pointed out, it was never meant to be an autobiography, The New Path. It's really, as the subtitle says, the story of my life with Paramhansa Yogananda. And Swamiji says that sometimes a person, though insignificant in himself, basically his life becomes significant because of its connection with a great soul. And so I know that's true for me and my life, and I suspect that many of us feel the same way, that if it weren't for Master, if it weren't for this path, these teachings, his living presence, what meaning would life have? Especially in this time that we're in right now with these different world challenges, and especially the virus causing us so much isolation, that as I was saying the other day, we can't distract ourselves as easily, and no one can. And so there is a lot of challenge that's coming up internally and emotionally for some people, because they can't distract themselves from their discomfort, from their pain and different things. And these things are there to be healed. But with Master, it all makes sense. Or at least we know that it makes sense to him. And so we can cling to him, saying, well, he understands and he'll tell me too in time. You know, we may not have that experience of learning like we did when we were young. You know, if you saw some advanced mathematics problems, or saw somebody older than you working in a foreign language, maybe writing an essay or doing something that was just incomprehensible, you know, at first, or somebody having a great skill in art, or a great skill, mechanical skill, being able to repair things, or doing something that just seemed, you know, like magic. We have that confidence. Well, my parents know, my teacher knows, my older brother or sister knows, you know, that they know, and in time I will learn it too. And there's a certain security in that, because somebody we trust knows this, so they will help us, or maybe on another side, if they can learn it, then I can too. So we know that Master knows. And we know that the answers are there. We know that we'll get through this. And he's there to be with us. And so it's up to us to be here with him. And of course we are. And in celebrating his birthday today, of course, as you know, it's January 5th, which is Tuesday. And we'll have a meditation on that day. But again, we may feel that, oh, if only I had lived with Master, then it would have been so much easier. And of course I can't say, because I didn't live with him myself. And of course I've had that same feeling. Swamiji did say that it was quite challenging for people to live with Master. For one fact, just look at how many people had left him. I don't say this in judgment or criticism at all, just simply observation from what Swamiji has shared in the New Path, that it was a challenge to the ego, and we see that all the time in ourselves, that when our ego gets challenged by a truth that we find uncomfortable or inconvenient, or it demands of us more change or more energy than we're willing to put out, we can just quietly turn away or defer or postpone or sometimes fight against. And so it's not surprising that Master presented a great challenge to people without even saying a word. On the other hand, he presented a great magnetic attraction, the greatest gift that anybody could have is a true guru, and for us our greatest treasure is Master. And that the thought was often expressed by his disciples also. Swamiji said even those living with Master, every day, living, not just having met him, but living with him in the ashram, at different times they would express, does he love me? Has he accepted me? I mean, they were his disciples living under the same roof. I mean, again, what a gift it would be for us who just can't have that opportunity in this life anyway. Perhaps we had it in the last life. I don't say we'll have it in the next, although that would be lovely, but let's have it in the next as free souls coming down to be with him. But he said people were often feeling that doubt, or because maybe Master would appear distant, testing the disciple to see, can you feel me inside? As he said to one disciple, get to know me in meditation, if you want to know me as I really am, as I truly am. And that, of course, that opportunity is there for us even now. And that challenge was there for them, meaning that challenge is there for everyone, whether you have this particular circumstance or not, whether you get to be with Master or not. We still have to connect inside. We have to. And so it wasn't necessarily easier living with him in that regard too, because again, not everyone said yes, yes, because he's accepted me. I know, because he said to me, you may come, therefore I can rest on that. Still, there was some people had that question in their mind. So if we have that question, we can say, well, I have to solve it. I have to work it out inside. But on the other side of it, just see how your life has changed. That's what he said to Swamiji. He said, get more devotion. And later, after Swamiji was developing his devotion, which was to say, to opening up his heart again, he said he felt that joy that he had felt when he was a child. But his over-intellectuality or pseudo-intellectuality, as he said once, sort of pushed that free, trusting joy aside. And he had that deep desire to become, as he said, simple again. In this case, it would be the simplicity not of a child in the sense of being immature, but the simplicity of a saint, who, of course, is also childlike. And so the Master said to Swamiji, see how dry your life was when you depended on intellect alone. And of course, and how much better it was now, his life. And so we may not feel that way. Intellectuality may not be our particular challenge, but I think we can all see and all say how Master has changed our lives. How, if you're not sure, or if you need to sort of remember, or you want to go deeper, one thought might be to read Autobiography of a Yogi again. Even if you just finished reading it, if you're already reading it, wonderful. But to renew that thrill, to find new teachings in the book, to see how the book has changed since you read it last, which is to say how much, of course, we have changed. There was an author, Mark Twain, I think it was, who said he was amazed when he came home from college after 4 years to discover how much his father had learned and how his father had grown in wisdom. And of course it was a joke, because he was saying that Mark Twain was realizing and appreciating his father finally, because he, the student, had been learning and had started to grow up and could now see what a man his own father, his own parents were. And so, again, as we grow, we begin to read new things in the book, or we have new experiences to relate to in Autobiography of a Yogi. But also our hearts are even more open to Master. And so there's more he's able to feed us. I wanted to also share with you an essay that Swamiji wrote entitled, Why I Love My Guru. Because just as we would often on Master's birthday, we would read My Guru from Whispers from Eternity, Master writing about Sri Yukteswarji. So I thought we might enjoy hearing these words of Swamiji. This was one of the first essays in the book, or this is from Religion in the New Age and Other Essays, is the title of the book. And this was one of the first essays that Swamiji wrote for that later became that book. This was in 2006 and 2007. And this was at a time Dharmini and I had just come to India. We'd been there for about a year or so. And we were all, all of us here who had come to India were all living together at that time, not scattered about in different cities as we are now, of course, very happily, with the family growing and grown as it has. But still, this time with Swamiji was a precious time. And Uh, so, um, so I thought to read this to you. Friendship, Yogananda used to say, is the most rewarding human experience because it is a free gift without any compulsion. Even in mother's love, a certain compulsion exists, the compulsion of nature in the thought that her children are her own. Were some child of hers to die and be reborn next door, would she feel the same love for it? Not possessive love, certainly. Noble an institution as friendship is, however, it was not until I met my guru that I came to understand its higher octaves. As a divine friend, he was perfection itself. For friendship should be uplifting, and that is something it is not always. So long as a relationship is between two egos, it may only reinforce ego consciousness. Much can be said all the same in favor of ordinary human friendship, even when it only affects the ego. Experiments have been done on plants, showing that when a plant is given love, it flourishes, where if love is denied it, its growth becomes stunted by comparison. Moreover, if hate and rejection are directed at it, it often withers and dies. Friendship is like that. Even if it offers only ego balm, a healthy ego is much more to be desired than a crippled, sickly one, forever unsure of itself, inwardly wilting and cringing before everything and everybody. Though much, then, might be said on the possible negative influences of ordinary human friendship, basically it is something all human beings need. I have in this life been fortunate in many respects, but perhaps in none of them so much as in two inborn qualities. First, never to be influenced in my opinions of others by what they thought of me. And second, never to feel even tempted to justify myself, not to myself either, when I knew I was in the wrong. These qualities have been my strength. True friendship must spring not from need, but from inner strength. Only in this way can it be purely giving. One danger of friendship lies in the fact that friends want you to agree with them. Bad friends, consequently, want you to agree with and support them in error. As my guru put it, if you try to talk to them of higher things, they reply jovially, "Oh, get off it, come, have a drink." This is friendship? Too often, in other words, a person's apparent friends are actually enemies to his highest interests. As the Bhagavad Gita puts it, when the self is the friend of the self, it is its greatest friend. But when the self is the enemy of the self, it is its greatest enemy. A true friend is one who helps you to befriend that higher self. He supports everything that is best and truest for your highest welfare. He sympathizes with you and tries to understand your point of view. He will not condemn you hastily for any disagreement, nor separate himself from you in his sympathy owing to any divergence of opinion. There are both dignity and mutual respect in such a relationship, and yes, a shared sense of fun also. For an ability to laugh kindly together is one way of sharing trust, confidence, and mutual support. I hadn't the advantage in my childhood and youth of many close friendships, for I was never in one place long enough to form them. I did live till I was 9 in Teliagin, Romania, but childhood friendships are not often deep, and many of my friends lived there just as temporarily as we did, until their fathers were shifted further by their company. I spent a year and a half in Switzerland, where I was ill most of the time. 6 months followed in Bucharest, and then 2 years at school in England. We moved to America in 1939, where I spent a year at Hackley School near Tarrytown, New York, 2 years at Kent School in Connecticut, a year at Scarsdale High, 2 years at Haverford College, a year and a half at Brown University, a year in Charleston, South Carolina, and then Master and SRF. 14 years with the latter, 60 years so far with the former. Rod, my best friend in college, had a twofold influence on me, one for the good, the other for the not-so-good. He helped me to regain my self-confidence when I needed it. Unfortunately, though brilliant, he had the fault of intellectual pride, by which he infected me. My intellect being perhaps my strong point, it also became my weak link. Through all the years that followed, my one truest and best of all possible friends was always my guru, Paramhansa Yogananda. He was true in every respect, the human quite as much as the divine. It's true that I couldn't joke with him in the familiar way friends enjoy with one another. Though I couldn't altogether repress my sense of humor with him, I was too young not to be always in deep awe of him. For me, being with him was like being in the presence of God himself. Yet I asked him endless questions, more perhaps than anyone else. And he answered me, for he wanted me to understand. Again, if he joked with me, I, with my lively sense of humor, would joke back. But I couldn't help holding him at a certain distance, never quite sure of myself in his presence. That much said, he was with me, not at all the kind of stern disciplinarian he has sometimes been described as being. He was kind, forgiving, endlessly and deeply understanding, supportive of all my, indeed of everyone's, human feelings and failings, not indeed of the failings themselves, but of us as people. I found him to be ever anxious to help us in our efforts to mature and to grow out of our every delusion. Once he scolded me for my involvement in a confrontation where I had felt righteously indignant. It took me a little while to adjust mentally to this volte-face for being scolded for, as I saw it, doing right. I'm sure I didn't say the volte-face right, but I'm not sure what it is. It might be, is it French or Latin? Anyway. Looking at me deeply, with heartfelt understanding, but I said to him the next day, "Please, Master, scold me more often." Looking at me deeply, with heartfelt understanding, he answered, "I understand, but that isn't what you need. You need more devotion." He also encouraged me in every little gain. Often no one else even noticed him doing so. One day he said to me lovingly, "Keep on with your devotion, Walter. Just see how dry your life is when you depend on intellect." And one time, feeling intensely my separation from him, I went to Encinitas, where he had gone for a visit, on purpose to see him. As soon as we met, he responded kindly, "I have missed you, Walter." That evening, David Smith, a brother's disciple, involved us in worldly chatter, and my devotion slipped. When I saw Master the next day, he tugged at a lock of my hair lightly, and reminded me with the same loving smile, though with a hint of reproof, "I have missed you." It pains me when I hear people say coldly, "Master wouldn't have approved of that. Master wouldn't tolerate disorder. Master was always a strict taskmaster." These things have been said to justify the disciple's own lack of kindness, sympathy, and simple humane charity. But I remember one time, I've quoted it elsewhere in these essays, when he came into the monk's dining room and found it in utter embarrassing chaos. His only comment then was, "Well, it might be worse." In his treatment of the other disciples, I never saw him speak to them harshly. In fact, I wonder whether their impression of harshness didn't come from their own rebellious egos. The few times he scolded me, I saw only regret in his eyes for having to speak strongly to me. He did so for my benefit purely. There was a period in Dayamata's discipleship, she told me, when he scolded her almost daily. She resented it, especially because his manner was then so different from what he had shown her when she first came. One evening she prayed, "From now on, Divine Mother, I will direct my love first to you." When she went indoors for his blessing, he tapped her lightly on the top of her head and murmured approvingly, "Very good." The scolding stopped. He had wanted to break her of an excessively human attachment to him. With those who were not disciples, he was affability itself, kindly, warm, entirely accepting, and forgiving of any insult or calumny. I remember one time I mentioned this occasion in my book, The Path. At a public function, a man from India was a bit tipsy and treated Master with a familiarity no one else would have even dreamed of, putting his arms around Master, laughing jovially, and talking familiarly. Debbie, a Bengali disciple, ridiculed the man to Master in Bengali, a language unknown to this Indian, for his inebriation. "Don't," Master scolded him quietly, so the man himself wouldn't notice. Master saw this man in the full dignity of a human being, not as someone who, in his drunkenness, had lost that dignity. Another time, the Master, as he was entering a hotel, was approached by a drunken stranger who embraced him and cried, "Hello, Jesus Christ!" "Hello," Master responded affably, then shared with him a touch of the inner bliss he himself was experiencing. "Shay, what are you drinking?" demanded the man. "I can tell you it has a lot of kick in it," the Master replied. He then touched the man on the forehead, leaving him sober, though perhaps somewhat bewildered. These are stories I have shared before elsewhere. Here is another one. A member of the Indian community came to Mount Washington with Ambassador Binar I. Shen just days before Master left his body. This Indian lived in Los Angeles and had devoted years to persecuting the Master by spreading untruths against him. At a certain moment that afternoon, the two of them were briefly alone together. Master said to the man, "Remember, I will always love you." Herbert Freed, a brother disciple, overheard the Master's words. A photograph of Master taken at that moment shows the visitor's expression. It reveals a mixture of emotions, wonder, shame, perhaps dismay at his own pettiness. For those who understand the inwardness of that moment, it is a dramatic photograph. It was this episode, incidentally, that gave me the inspiration for my one-act play, The Jewel in the Lotus. The Master simply accepted people as they were, with never a breath of criticism, but always with love. It often surprised me to see the completeness of his acceptance. People whom I myself might have turned away from with distaste, Master treated kindly and with a gentle, though always dignified, smile. Not everyone understood him by any means. I'll never forget a neighbor of Master's at 29 Palms when the man gave one of my brother disciples his view. Master used to share fruits with them, an act of generosity that to this man seemed beyond comprehension. One day, speaking of Master, "You know, he's a little," making a circular movement to indicate someone a little touched in the head. "But," he added admiringly, "he's got a heart of gold." The Master was a true friend to everybody, seeing all as his very own. That is why, wherever he went, he always found people friendly and eager to help him. Yet when someone came to him and asked to be accepted as a disciple, he saw his responsibility as a divine friend to be the highest type of friend he could be to that person. In this sense, he might be compared to a divine fisherman, never letting the line get too tight, but if it slackened, testing it to see how forcefully he could reel it in without letting it break. He was infinitely kind to us, forgiving, supportive, gentle, humorous, one with us in friendship, and ever completely loving. Yet he was also careful always to turn our minds and aspirations toward our own highest potential in God. Never did I see him come down from that high purpose. And always in his calm gaze I saw a complete absence of ego motive, including the slightest impulse either to act or react personally. People, men perhaps especially, who lack personal motivation are often misunderstood by others, bound as almost all people are by personal desires. Master had many self-styled enemies who fancied they saw in him someone dark, someone scheming for subtle hidden ends, which he was not frank enough to admit openly, and which must therefore, so they imagined, have been all the more sinister. I think it was his very strength they feared. Their fears, however, were nothing but projections of a darkness in their own natures. Perhaps it was his strength also that made some of the disciples think of him as harsh. Otherwise, I can't imagine how anyone saw him as anything but a strong bulwark, supportive always of our true needs. No, I think those disciples too simply hadn't the humility or the sensitivity to see in him the truest friend they would or could ever have. Only consider his poem, God's Boatman. In that poem he promised to come back, if need be, 1,000,000,000 times, as long as one stray brother sits weeping by the wayside. Think of it. There was no personal necessity for him to return to this material plane. He came here out of a purely selfless desire to bring others out of delusion and to lead them back to God's kingdom. How many times, I have often wondered, has he returned to earth already in perfect freedom? I have good reason to believe that he has been coming back for many thousands of years, and always with the same purpose and with the same universal love. He himself often told us, I killed Yogananda long ago. Only God lives in this temple now. And I heard him declare also, I was freed many lifetimes ago. Think of it. The vast majority of souls who achieve oneness with God are satisfied never to emerge from that blissful state again. Divine bliss is too perfectly satisfying to them, and they suffered enough before attaining it. All they want now is eternal, complete rest in the Lord. What did our Guru want from us? Nothing. Nothing, that is, but our highest good. Could any friend be more perfect, more dear, more wonderful than that? When I met him, he said to me, I give you my unconditional love. No treasure could be greater, surely, than that sacred promise. He has fulfilled it in countless ways. More and more through the years I have found him mentally guiding me, leading me toward final inner freedom, filling me with inner bliss. He hasn't made the way easy, unless indeed I consider, as I do, that every hardship has become in the end a supernal blessing. No, I can think of no experience in my life that has not ended in sweetness, in an expansion of love, and in deep gratefulness. Forgiveness for wrongs, hurts, betrayals, tests. All I can say is, what tests? What betrayals? What hurts? What wrongs? There were never wrongs personally. They were never wrongs personally to me. In all my dealings with Master in the body, I always knew he was on my side, not against anyone or anything else, but supportive of me in all my struggles toward perfection. He responded supportively to my least thought. If I was wrong, he said so in such a way that only I, if others were present, could know what he was talking about. He never blurted out anything. All of his words were carefully measured so as to be understandable and acceptable to me as possible. There was, as I said, a dignity about him that was completely innate and natural. He was indeed a king among men, and I think most people felt it instinctively. And everything I ever saw him do or heard him say was completely appropriate to the occasion. Tara, a sister disciple, once remarked to me about him, "Every time I think I've understood him, I find he's much more than that." I didn't say so to her, but I was astonished that anyone could even think of understanding him. To me it seemed like trying to understand the ocean. His friendship for each of us was deeply personal, yet he was, for each of us, like a window onto infinity, inviting us to come outside and merge in that vastness. I love my Guru, as he himself wrote about his own Guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, as the spoken voice of silent God. He was ever, and is now more than ever, my nearest, dearest companion. And if I am right, I feel his inner smile. If I am wrong, I feel his inner encouragement to do better. He is on my side in every struggle against delusion. Could anyone be a better, truer friend than that?